Rest in peace, imagination. Here lies art, PE, and music. That's what's written on the makeshift memorials outside of the U.S. Department of Education. A message that Detroit native Tawana Simpson says she knows all too well as a school board member. She was one of the protesters, a part of the Occupied Department of Education action. The group gathered from April 4th to April 7th to protest what they say is the destructive influences of corporate and for profit education reforms, particularly when it comes to the teachers that are in the classrooms.
And a lot of your charter schools, as well as some of your public schools, but not as many because of unions, they have Teach for America teachers. And those teachers come in without union contracts. They're straight out of college, and they're there to do some community service to forgive student loans. So therefore, and the requirements is that they come into urban areas and then their loans are forgiven. So therefore, the charter schools tend to hire Teach for America students where communities that can finance professional teachers have professional teachers. So that's why I believe that it's a separate and unequal way that we're going into in education here in terms of our teachers.
Tawana brought her 9-year-old niece, Ejaz, along to be a part of the event. Ejaz currently attends a charter school that's outside of their neighborhood, and Tawana says the push to close public schools nationwide threatens to break down the community ties in neighborhoods that are already seen as vulnerable.
Closing schools as well as charter schools break down a sense of community because charter schools do not foster community. They cherry pick students. They only allow students who don't have um, issues to attend. Um, but when you close public schools in communities or any school in any community, you break down the sense of community.
The closing of public schools have made headlines in recent months, with major shutdowns in cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Elementary school teacher Brian Jones says in order for public schools to succeed, the model of competition does more harm than good, since the quality of all schools needs to be raised.
That setting up competition between the schools that in no way sets us up to that. Let me just give you for instance. I used to teach in East Harlem, and my public school became invaded by a corporate chain of charter schools that was trying to spread and occupy more and more spaces in public school buildings where they could get space for free. And so one of the things they did was they started advertising. They literally paid more than $1 million to a Madison Avenue advertising firm to create billboards, bus stop ads. Parents came to me having received 10 or 12 glossy, high color, foldable brochures in the mail. And so, what's my public school to do? This is competition. Should we create a glossy brochure? Should we spend $1 million to retain a firm? In other words, should we spend more and more of the public school dollar on the competition between the providers? And so, in that advertising process, in the process of competition, inevitably there's overheated claims. And then the public has to try to discern what's the truth here and which is more. I mean, it becomes a ridiculous thing. And so they're trying to really do to education what has already been accomplished in healthcare, where we have an overwhelmingly privatized system, and more of each healthcare dollar goes to the bureaucracy of paying the bills, goes to the profiteering, goes to the CEO salaries. And we've seen now the same thing in education. You have people who operate a chain of charter schools pay themselves north of $500,000 for just serving a few hundred children, whereas the chancellor of 1 million children, the chancellor of New York City, does not make that much money.
However, there is still a large number of parents dissatisfied with the results of the public education system, a point Jones says he can understand. But he argues instead of abandoning public schools and creating this model of competition, the state should adopt effective practices of charter schools, like smaller classroom sizes, into public education systems.
What could we do to improve the public schools? Let's start with what are people who are in charge of education doing for their own children? What are people like Mayor Bloomberg in New York City, or Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, or Obama, or Arnie Duncan? Where are these people sending their children? And overwhelmingly, we see them sending them to private institutions which have a few features that are very interesting. They have small class sizes. They have incredibly rich resources, and they have experienced teachers. They do not grind through The Sidwell Friends Academy does not grind through Teach for America kids who just showed up out of Denver and just have a lot of energy. No, they have teachers who are experienced, who have degrees, who've studied childhood development and have experience as educators. And they give those people professional autonomy and resources so that they can grow and be the best that they can be. They set them up to succeed. So that's the model that they choose for their children. I say let's take those elements, experienced teachers, small class sizes, rich resources and curriculum. Let's take that model and put that in the public schools. And I think we'll have much better success. We'll have much better equity, we'll have much better racial justice. And I think parents will be thrilled to send their kids to public schools that look like that.
Organizers of the Occupy the Department of Education, like Peggy Robertson, say parents, educators, and students need to get informed and demand their government stand up for equality in education.
There's a way to take our schools back and not only take them back to improve them. And to improve them, we need the autonomy, a teacher such as myself, to really get our voices heard so that we can share ways to improve schools. But the way to do that is we can begin to refuse the high stakes tests. We need to refuse that. We need to refuse the Common Core standards and recognize that these are tools of the corporations to privatize our public education, using our public tax dollars and quite honestly using our children.
Organizers of Occupy the Department of Education say they are beyond trying to get a seat at the table of the Department of Education. Instead, they are creating their own table, and they will be holding grassroots events like this one in the near future. For the Real News Network, Jessica Devereaux, Washington.